I'm James Howell, and this is my PowerPoint presentation on effective classroom instruction. This is not my room, so this is a disclaimer. We had some activity here recently, and my room does not have Wi-Fi, so I am in a peer's classroom. So none of this Wizard of Oz stuff or anything else that's remotely feminine is me. Okay. All right, so now that's over. Can I have the first slide? Okay, when I was doing my research and covering both the online elements at Educational Impact and then the class material from the Dean book, I found one quote that I thought was great specifically for my county because they're quite resistant to anything that's new. But I love this one. It said, a little something here, plus a little something here, plus a little something here, and soon 85% of students are passing instead of 64%. Marzano. Our county is adopting the 5 techniques for effective classroom instruction, and so this was the one that I selected to kind of go through, and I thought this was a great quote to just kind of stress to some of my teachers that it's just little changes here and there, and then your instructional delivery method will be better. Next. Okay, if the current method of instruction is already working so well, why don't the scores reflect this truth? The expectations our students must prepare to meet are different than they were 10 years ago. That was one of the most illuminating things I got from the videos, was how different the standardized tests are, the requirements. In the past, it seems like it was a lot of recall-based information, and now it seems like they want the kids to actually problem solve and actually infer, and instead of just kind of being led through it, they have to be more engaging with the process. Our struggling students today do not learn the same way we did in our day. It's not the same world. When I was in school, we didn't have internet, we didn't have a lot of these distractions that they do, and now it seems like they're a lot more visually oriented, and I think the instructional delivery method needs to reflect that. We cannot assume they will just pick up something important or important information by any indirect method. Another thing that I liked about the Marzano techniques was it kept stressing explicit delivery and explicit instruction. And if you've worked with kids, I have for 18 years, and I know that they need as explicit instructions as possible. Something must be done to address the struggling student who does not achieve as a recipient of instruction that works for students who are already successful. Basically, if you're a teacher, then things, more than likely, some things came easy to you in school. I know for me, I barely cracked a book in high school, but that's not the student that I'm teaching. That's not the student that we're teaching. Those kids that already do well, they're going to do well no matter what. But if we want the scores to improve, we have to reach out and we have to try and bring in the students that are struggling. And that means an alteration in instructional delivery method. Next. All right, to increase student understanding, a refocusing effort by teachers on instructional methods must be made that directs students towards what skills are important. This is a focus on what is important. Always, with the objective in mind, questions are used to remind students of prior knowledge about the topic. In the Dean book, I thought there was a lot of great information, and it included a lot of building prior knowledge and getting a student to engage with the material. Me personally, even without this stuff, I've always done what I've called readying the room, or setting the story. Before I cover something new, I always kick off the material with them, give them background, context, try to relate it to what they're doing. So I was very glad to see some of that validated. Use explicit cues and higher order questions to challenge students to think critically. Again, I teach AP English Literature, so we usually deal with the material itself. We deal with the higher end of the taxonomy of questions, but teachers need to be using the higher end questions in order to challenge students, because one thing they're tested on is critical thinking. Have students utilize advanced organizers to prepare them for the knowledge to come. I mentioned earlier that the students are much more visually oriented now, and advanced organizers, getting them to engage with the text and prepare them, that can only increase achievement. Have students engage with the material by using non-linguistic representations, and place direct emphasis on time-proven skills like summarizing, and note-taking. Both these things were eye-opening to me, but again, it kind of goes back with you have to be explicit. The students, they don't absorb things. They have to be shown how to do it. I don't remember somebody showing me how to take notes, but I know that kids today do not have that skill. And literally what comes easily to me, I have to find a process to show them. That's one of the big things I think that this whole method kind of encompasses, is that teachers to whom the material comes easily have to find the vocabulary, have to find the means of communication to reach students that struggle. Next. All right. So that was kind of what we have to do, and now some things that teachers can do in their classrooms. Classroom practice, explicit cues. Use explicit cues and prepare the event. Explicit cues activate students' prior knowledge by bringing to mind relevant personal experiences or situations that they encounter on a regular basis. Like I said, before I start a unit, whether it be a novel or a play, an AP English literature, or when we do something new in drama, I always try and engage the students and kind of get them to buy in before they see the material, so that when they go into it, it's not uncomfortable and as uncomfortable a process. Explicit cues begin building a framework for new learning. If they already have a piece of it, if they already have some background, then what they gain with it will just connect to it, and it feels more solid. I guess that's why they're using the word framework. Example, use images or pictures of effects and have students formulate causes. That I thought was a great idea, to give them pictures of an effect of something and then ask the students to come up with the causes. Then when they get to the material and they see if they were in any way, shape, or form close to what the causes are that they discover. Next. Classroom practice, inferential questions. Simple recall type questions do not adequately prepare students to meet the expectations of today. Like I said earlier, the new standardized tests and most of the tasks that they go to out in the workplace are not recall based. It's not content information with everything accessible on the internet. Why does somebody need to possess all that knowledge? You can look it up in seconds, but you do have to be able to solve problems. Inferential questions compel the student to use their prior knowledge and connect with the material. Again, what I tell my students, to own the material, to make it theirs. The students begin to fill in the blanks and continue to build the framework for learning. Examples include, these are inferential type questions, what equipment is typically used in this event? So they would have to know something about the event and then infer or fill in the blank what type of equipment would go with it. How is the value of this thing changed by this action? Again, engaging the student and having them solve something. Evaluating the value of it. The cause and effects. The action changes the value of something. What is the basic process involved in reaching this state? Again, filling in the blanks and trying to explain the nature of the process where something is altered. Next. Classroom practice. Analytical questions. Analytic questions prompt students to think more deeply and critically about the information presented. This again, they're higher order questions to get the students engaged and to think critically. Teachers can frame questions to have students analyze errors, construct support for arguments, and analyze perspectives. Examples include, what are the errors in reasoning in this information? What are some of the limitations of this argument or the assumptions underlying it? And what is the reasoning behind this perspective? All these, it just so happens that I teach a subject where we use questions like this all the time, and literally that's all my kids do is work in analysis, whether or not it's by close reading or it's by communicating the information back in rigorous essays. But this is what all teachers of subjects need to get into the habit of doing, is framing their questions in this way to get students to do these tasks. Next. Classroom practice, advanced organizers. Advanced organizers are stories, pictures, and other introductory materials that set the stage for learning and begin building the framework. 4 formats for the advanced organizers include expository, narrative, skimming, and graphic. Expository advanced organizers provide the meaning and purpose of the learning to follow. These, again, are tools that the students will use before they read the material to get them interested, to start the framework that they will then add to as they absorb the material. Expository advanced organizers might include text or pictures and provide examples of what is important in the learning to follow to get them to buy in ahead of time. Next slide, please. Advanced organizer continued. Narrative advanced organizers. Information presented by the teacher in a story format before the material to engage the student's interest. Examples might be reading a short story or playing a video clip. It's a time-tested method, almost like giving a parable first and then the explanation afterwards. I do this all the time in AP English Lit, and it's a fantastic technique. I haven't done the video clip first, but I know that many of my peers do that. Another one is skimming. The process of previewing the material in advance to get a general impression before reading. Now I know that people know what skimming is, but directly showing, explicitly showing the student how to do it by questions provided by the teacher and getting them to make predictions. That's what they need to know. You can't assume that they know how to skim. You can't assume that they know how to take notes. You have to show them. You have to give them a technique. Graphic advanced organizers. Given to the students before the material is presented, graphic advanced organizers clearly communicate what students are expected to learn. This could take any form that goes with the material you're doing, but basically you're giving them big headlines, you're having them fill in the columns with information that they predict that they're going to learn about. Next. Classroom practice, non-linguistic representations. Non-linguistic representations are strategies to engage the student while learning and aid them in representing their knowledge as imagery. These contain the following. Graphic organizers. These combine linguistic and non-linguistic forms of information. The 6 most common types are descriptive, time sequence, process, cause and effect, episode, and generalization principle and concept. All right. All of these organizers are for students to not just have or to combine text that they get from the material, but also to relevate it in a visual format, to personalize the learning experience for them. That's one of the strengths of these things. They can make physical models or manipulative. Students can create mental images of the relevant knowledge. This one is the one that you need to watch out for, because students can sometimes be more focused on creating their physical model instead of the material. So again, always focus on the objective. Generate mental pictures. If the teacher provides detail or experiences for concrete and abstract concepts, the student can then create a mental picture to facilitate understanding. Create pictures, illustrations, and pictographs. Students can create symbols or symbolic pictures to personalize their learning and enhance understanding. And finally, engage in kinesthetic activities. Students who attach physical movement with specific knowledge generate mental images of that knowledge. This one specifically, I can attest to that I just started doing this year. My kids at AP Lit, they do a vocab word a day. And when I give them the definition, but then they have to do their own sentences, and I make them stand and act out something in the sentence. And the vocab scores, this is for AP Lit, have dramatically increased. I can only imagine that the same type of relating the physical movement to absorbing the knowledge, I can only imagine it would carry the same across the board. Next classroom practice, summarizing. Again, it's a tried, true practice, but we need to be more explicit. Summarizing is the process of distilling information down to its most salient or relevant points to aid in understanding relevant material. I don't think anybody doesn't know what summarizing is, except the students. The new version of summarizing is practice in conjunction with other cognitive strategies. Okay? Here are some types of summarizing we're going to get. Rule-based summarizing, summary frames, and reciprocal teaching. I remember reading in the information that summarizing in the traditional form, not that impactful, but when it's related to a cognitive process, it has a lot of impact on their learning. Next slide. Rule-based summarizing. The teacher should set well-defined steps or rules to follow when learning and provide explicit, concrete steps to follow. Steps might include take out the material that's not important to understanding. Again, the teacher models this for the student. Take out repetitive words. Replace lists of words with one descriptive word or words. Find topic sentence or create one. This works best when the entire school adopts this method as a consistent procedure, so that the student goes from class to class, all the summarizing is done in the same way. I acknowledge that that is a challenge. In my school certainly, but certainly everywhere as well, getting everybody on board with the same practice. Next slide. Another summarizing technique, summary frames. I really like this one. I'm going to use this one in AP. Summary frames are a series of questions designed to highlight critical elements of a specific text pattern. 6 main types of summary frames are narrative, topic restriction illustration, definition, argumentation, problem solution, and conversation. Narrative frames could include questions like, who are the main characters and what distinguishes them? How the main characters accomplish their goals? What were the consequences? We kind of already do this for every genre of material that we enter. I already have programmed for them 6 to 10 questions that they always take to each, whether it be poetry or drama or fiction. But this has other ones that I hadn't used yet, so that's what I'm thinking about. Topic restriction illustration frames include, what's the general statement or topic? What examples illustrate the topic or restriction? Definition frames include, what's being defined? What characteristics distinguish the item from other things in the general category? So you notice the narrative one works well for me with the language arts, but then topic restriction and definition could work for science, could work for math, and so on. This is a technique I think that works cross-curricular. Argumentation frames include, what's the basic claim or focus of the information? What restricts the claim? What evidence counters the claim? We use that in all of our essay responses. Problem solution frames include, what is the actual problem? What is a possible solution? Which solution has the best chance of succeeding and why? Next slide. Classroom practice, reciprocal teaching. Definitely using this one in my classes. Reciprocal teaching embraces these 4 comprehension strategies: summarizing, questioning, clarifying, and predicting. After modeling the strategies, again, teacher must model. The students begin to assume the roles in group discussions. The summarizer, and this can be done, everybody can do all the roles, or you can break kids up into group discussion, and they can each take a separate role and then change between topics. The summarizer relates to significant portions of what has been read, heard, or seen. Other students may add to the summary as well. The questioner then asks questions designed to help identify important information. The clarifier brings new understanding to words or terms unfamiliar to the group. Finally, the predictor asks questions about what will happen next or as a result of the information already discussed. Next. Classroom practice, note-taking. You may think this is simple, but again, you can't assume that the students will absorb this. You have to show them. Effective note-taking requires students to determine what is most important and then state that information in condensed form. Examples include teacher-prepared notes, teach students a variety of note-taking formulas, and provide opportunities provided for students to revise their notes and use them for review. Teacher-prepared notes. A teacher can use one of the many templates to instruct their students on how to take organized and relevant notes on new material. These notes can be differentiated for students with less background knowledge. In other words, if you're giving them the forms and you have the big categories on there, the ones that need more notes will fill up with more, and the ones that need less won't. So really, it's more personalized to each student. Teach students, go back one thing. Sorry. Teach students a variety of note-taking formulas. Webbing, informal outlining, combination, that's linguistic and non-linguistic. This gives, again, a personal approach to each student. Kids learn differently, so if you provide them with a variety of different types of formulas, they can pick the one they like the best, or the one that's most appropriate to the material. Provide opportunities for students to revise their notes and use them for review. Teachers can use the review and revision process to help students identify and correct misconceptions in notes they previously took, and this process improves the utility of their notes as a study aid. This is a great thing if you use them, not just turn it over to the student, but come back to them, and the kids will definitely gain from the process because they'll go back to their notes. They'll identify what doesn't work or what's changed since they have now discovered more of the information. Next slide. Okay. That's my presentation. Here are my references. 2 of the modules from Marzano, from the 5 Practices of Highly Effective Classrooms, and then the Dean reference, Classroom Instruction That Works, 2nd edition. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks very much.